What seemed like a harmless sketch by young Prince Louis during a routine art class sent shockwaves through the royal inner circle. When royal protection officers caught sight of the drawing, their expressions turned from curiosity to alarm. What did he see? Or worse, what was he told? This was no ordinary child's doodle. It was a coded cry for help, or a chilling insight into something he should never have known. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It all began on what should have been an uneventful afternoon at the palace's private education wing. Prince Louis, only just beginning to find his creative voice, had been given a simple assignment: draw your favorite place. But when he handed his page to the teacher, the room reportedly fell silent. It wasn't a sunlit meadow or a royal garden. It was a crumbling castle, surrounded by looming shadows, a jagged, broken crown floating ominously above it all. The drawing was precise, intentional, and most alarmingly recognizable. Protection officers on standby were alerted immediately, and what they saw chilled them to the bone. The castle layout, though crudely rendered in colored pencil, mimicked real restricted sections of the royal estate areas Louis had never been allowed to access, let alone know in such detail. At first, the adults in the room dismissed it as an eerie coincidence, perhaps the product of an overactive imagination. But when Louis calmly insisted the image came from a dream, the room's atmosphere shifted. Dream or not, how did a child barely aware of the intricacies of the palace draw corridors that aligned with confidential security blueprints? It wasn't just the structure of the building that stood out. The figures drawn around the castle were faceless, hunched, and surrounded by what appeared to be fire or smoke. At the center, beneath the broken crown, a small boy stood alone. He was circled in red crayon. That one detail reportedly made a protection officer audibly gasp. As the drawing changed hands among staff, word reached Queen Camilla, who demanded to see it immediately. According to a palace insider, her face turned pale the moment she laid eyes on the sketch. She reportedly asked, "Where did he learn this?" before passing the drawing to an aide and whispering something no one could hear. King Charles was briefed the same evening and is said to have paced for over an hour before calling for an emergency review of the palace's internal communications. He allegedly told one aide, "This can't be ignored. Take it seriously. All of it." But what was all of it? What were they afraid of? Behind the formal response was a flurry of quiet panic. Psychological experts were discreetly brought in to assess Louis, but none could explain how he gained access to the imagery or symbols hidden in the art. Among whispers between staff, one theory began to gain traction: that Louis had overheard something, a conversation not meant for his ears. Or worse, he'd been shown something perhaps by someone inside the palace itself. Someone with an agenda, someone hiding behind a familiar smile. The palace scrambled to keep the incident under wraps. The original drawing was reportedly locked in a secure archive, replaced with a duplicate missing key details. Staff were told to remain silent. But the damage had been done. A quiet fear crept through the palace halls, not of an outside threat, but of something far more dangerous. Something that had already found its way inside. But it wasn't just what Louis drew, it was who he claimed helped him draw it, that turned this mystery into a full-blown palace alarm. When asked about his inspiration, Prince Louis mentioned something that chilled the blood of everyone present. "The man in the walls showed me." At first dismissed as childhood imagination, the phrase took a darker tone when staff confirmed strange disturbances near the royal nursery weeks prior. Innocence gave way to dread the moment Louis uttered those 7 words. A stillness fell over the room. His teacher froze, and aides exchanged silent glances. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Calm, assured, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And yet the implications were anything but. Who was this man? How did he get into Louis's dreams, or worse, into the palace itself? One senior protection officer reportedly went pale. Another left the room abruptly to make a discreet call. Within hours, the entire East Wing, the section housing the young prince's room, was placed under quiet surveillance. Then came Louis's description: a man with no eyes, long fingers, and a whisper that tickled the back of his neck. The palace psychiatrist, called in for a preliminary assessment, reportedly ended the session early and advised immediate security intervention. Lewis described this figure as someone who knew everything and lived behind the paintings. He even pointed to a spot on the nursery wall where he said the man would slide through late at night. Chillingly, this same wall had previously shown unexplained heat signatures during a routine thermal scan, just 3 weeks prior, an anomaly initially blamed on old insulation. A veteran staff member, speaking under anonymity, revealed that she had heard Louis speaking to someone during nap time, but in a voice not quite his own. It was deeper, slower, too controlled for a 5-year-old, she said. She'd written it off as dream talk until now. She wasn't the only one unnerved. Palace guards had recorded muffled noises from the hallway adjacent to Louis's suite, a corridor that had long been locked due to renovations. The sounds were faint but distinct, knocking, occasional rustling, and once, a rhythmic tapping that stopped the moment someone approached. Despite exhaustive searches, no intruder was found. But the palace never issued a formal report on the sweep. It was as if the official version "nothing was there" was more convenient than the truth. Behind closed doors, the theory shifted. Perhaps Louis hadn't seen a literal man at all. Perhaps he had overheard something, absorbed it, and transmuted it into fantasy. But even that explanation fell apart when Louis described the secret passage near the east fireplace. Only 3 living people were supposed to know about it, and Louis certainly wasn't one of them. Psychological evaluations followed, but rather than clarity, they brought more uncertainty. Louis showed no signs of trauma, fear, or confusion. Instead, he displayed an unusual calmness for a child supposedly hallucinating a faceless figure. One therapist even remarked, "It's as if he believes he's protecting someone else by speaking about it." And that, more than anything, set alarm bells ringing. Because what if Louis wasn't afraid? What if he felt a responsibility? That his message, masked in the language of dreams, was a warning. While officials scrambled to explain away the incident, one member of the family wasn't buying the imagination theory, and she was ready to confront the palace head-on. The public sees Catherine, Princess of Wales, as poised and graceful. But behind palace doors, she reportedly broke down in tears upon hearing Louis' account. She knew this wasn't just a child's fantasy. She'd seen signs for weeks. And now her instincts screamed that Louis was in danger. For weeks before the infamous drawing surfaced, Catherine had been documenting subtle but alarming changes in her youngest son's behavior. At first, it was innocent Louis mumbling in his sleep, murmuring fragments of sentences that seemed oddly mature. Then came the drawings. Not just the one that would later terrify the palace, but a series of increasingly dark sketches, castles engulfed in fire, blacked-out windows, figures with no eyes. He started hiding under tables, jumping at sounds no one else heard, and flinching when passing certain palace halls. Catherine noticed. She always noticed. And she began quietly writing everything down. A palace aide later claimed to have overheard her whisper to herself during a corridor walk, "They think I'm paranoid. But I know something's coming." It was more than maternal concern. It was a conviction that whatever was disturbing Louis was neither imaginary nor harmless. She began making requests, unusual ones. She asked that 2 specific staffers no longer be assigned near her son. She questioned the location of certain surveillance blind spots in the East Wing. She even asked for private security to monitor Louis' suite requests that Charles's advisors dismissed as excessive and emotional. Behind her back, some whispered that Catherine was unraveling. But she wasn't spiraling, she was calculating. And her efforts, though quietly undermined, didn't stop. She reportedly reached out to a former royal protection officer off record, asking if it was possible for someone to manipulate a child without being seen. The conversation was never officially acknowledged, but what truly rattled the palace was her alleged attempt to arrange for Louis to stay with her parents in Bucklebury, away from royal grounds. It was denied by palace officials almost immediately. Still, the mere act suggested a mother on the edge willing to defy protocol for her child's safety. Then came the confrontation. An argument so loud that it echoed through the palace's west corridor. Catherine versus a senior royal aide believed to be one of Charles's longtime confidants. Witnesses claimed Catherine slammed a folder of Louis's drawings on a table, saying, "You keep brushing this off, but you didn't see his face that night." "I did." The aide tried to downplay the issue, urging calm and discretion. But Catherine reportedly walked out mid-sentence, her voice trembling with fury. From that moment, her demeanor changed. She appeared less frequently at public events, reportedly because she was monitoring things personally. Her inner circle shrank, and she began controlling access to Louis with quiet precision. The palace had underestimated her. She wasn't breaking, she was preparing. She knew she couldn't fight a ghost with protocol. But what she didn't know was that someone outside the royal family had already seen the warning signs. And unlike the palace, this person wasn't under any oath of silence. But just as Catherine prepared to take matters into her own hands, someone else stepped into the spotlight. A teacher who saw the drawing before the palace ever did. The art teacher who first saw Louis's disturbing drawing initially claimed she misplaced it. But under pressure, and privately recorded, she admitted something darker. Someone from the palace approached her the same day and confiscated the drawing. They said it was a matter of national security. When the scandal quietly began to stir behind palace gates, the teacher whose name was kept from the public for her protection was initially calm. She had seen hundreds of children's sketches in her career. But Louis's drawing unsettled her immediately. It wasn't just the darkness in the imagery. It was the focus. The clean, deliberate strokes. The way Louis had stared down at the page, not looking up once, as if he was copying something from memory, something he couldn't unsee. He had barely spoken during class. There was no chatter, no laughter. Just silence. And then the image. A decaying crown. Figures looming over a tiny boy surrounded by flames. An exact outline of a corridor in the East Wing. She knew at once that it was not a typical child's imagination. But she didn't know how much trouble it would bring her. She would later confess, in a private recording sent to a friend, that a royal aide had entered the room within minutes of Louis handing in the drawing. He didn't speak to her. He looked at the paper, took it without explanation, and walked out. The second aide, a woman she had seen only a few times before, stayed behind and offered a vague, unnerving warning. Best not to mention this again. For everyone's sake. At first, she dismissed it as palace overreach and overreaction to a sensitive subject. But that evening, a plainclothes man appeared at her door. He didn't show a badge, didn't threaten her directly, but his message was clear: cooperate. She knew then that something wasn't right. And yet, she hadn't completely trusted the palace from the start. In the few seconds she had before the aide reached her desk, she had taken a photograph of the drawing with her phone. A quiet, protective impulse. And it would be that photo, grainy, slightly off-angle, but unmistakable, that would soon become the most controversial leak in royal history. At first she told no one, not even her colleagues. But as pressure mounted and whispers of a cover-up began to circle, she confided in a close friend. Someone who, unknown to her, had ties to a freelance media broker. And when that image changed hands, so did the stakes. The leak wasn't immediate. It simmered in the background, being verified, examined, and appraised. But the mere existence of a copy outside the palace walls sent shockwaves through royal corridors. Damage control went into overdrive. Calls were made. Legal teams assembled. But it was too late. The truth, or at least a version of it, was out. And the moment the image began circulating in select media circles, the palace could no longer contain the narrative. Questions erupted. Why had the teacher been silenced? Why had a drawing caused such a volatile reaction? And most chillingly, what did the royal family fear Louis had seen? The teacher, now under informal protection herself, vanished from the public eye. She declined interviews, ignored calls, and refused comment. But her one recorded confession, passed discreetly to a journalist, would ignite the next phase of the scandal. Because this wasn't just about a drawing anymore. It was about what it represented. A crack in the monarchy's carefully guarded walls. A glimpse into something they couldn't explain or control. As whispers of the drawing leaked beyond palace walls, one man's reappearance made the entire mystery far more dangerous and deeply personal. When Prince Harry caught wind of the scandal, he made a rare private call to his brother William. What he reportedly said sent chills through the future king's spine: keep him away from the mirrors. That's where I saw him too. What did Harry know? And what had he seen in his own youth? For years, Harry had remained distant not just physically, but emotionally from the royal family's inner dealings. But when the drawing surfaced and the whispers of Louis's strange behavior began trickling into the public domain, something shifted. According to a palace insider, Harry contacted William directly. No aides, no protocols, just two brothers, bound by blood and a legacy of secrets. And what Harry revealed wasn't just chilling, it was incriminating. He claimed he had experienced something similar as a child. Vivid dreams, whispers in the dark, and most hauntingly, a recurring figure who only appeared through reflections, mirrors, windows, even polished silver. Always watching. Always silent. Harry's memories, long buried beneath years of royal suppression and emotional distance, came flooding back. He told William that during his childhood, their nanny had once warned him, cryptically, to never trust a reflection that doesn't follow. At the time, he thought it was a bedtime joke. Now he wasn't so sure. Meghan, protective and wary, begged him to stay out of it. She feared that digging into royal shadows would reopen wounds that had only just begun to heal. But Harry reportedly told her, "This started long before us. And if we don't stop it, it'll never end." Even more disturbing was a revelation from a former palace butler now retired in France, who recalled Harry's inexplicable refusal to sleep in the East Wing as a child. The same East Wing now occupied by Louis. According to the butler, young Harry had once locked himself in a linen cupboard, trembling and refusing to leave until his room was changed. No explanation. Just the words, "He was there again," in the mirror. At the time, the staff chalked it up to nightmares. But in the wake of Louis's drawing and Harry's call, it no longer seemed coincidental. The call between the brothers wasn't documented through official channels, but leaked excerpts quickly found their way to a trusted royal biographer. It was said that William, upon hearing his brother's memories, fell into a long silence, one so unsettling that even the biographer hesitated to publish the full transcript. But one quote in particular stood out. "I thought it was just me," Harry had said. "I never thought it would come for one of ours." What followed was a tense attempt by William to involve their father. He urged Charles to speak directly to Harry, to confirm or deny any knowledge of similar incidents from their own childhood. But Charles reportedly refused. Whether out of fear, guilt, or stubborn tradition, no one could say. The king's silence, however, spoke volumes. It wasn't indifference, it was avoidance. And in that moment, William understood that if answers were going to be found, they wouldn't come from the throne. And yet, buried beneath decades of silence was a piece of forgotten history, an incident involving another royal child. One who had drawn the same image 30 years earlier. Long buried in palace archives was a sketch from 1994 strikingly similar to Louis's drawing. It belonged to a young Prince William, and was quietly removed from records at the Queen's request. Now it's resurfacing with haunting clarity. The drawing had been hidden so deeply within the royal archives that even seasoned staff forgot it existed until now. Uncovered by a whistleblower within the palace's archival division, the sketch was said to be preserved inside an envelope marked restricted. Eyes only. Monarch. It was crude, childlike, but unmistakably disturbing. A towering, shadowed structure stood at its center. Around it, figures were drawn hunched and crying, faceless and incomplete. Blood spilled from the crown above, dripping across the edges of the paper. At the time, no one had known how to explain it. William had drawn it late one evening, then collapsed shortly after, muttering the words he watches, as his body shook in his mother's arms. The Queen, upon seeing the image, reportedly called for its immediate removal from all record-keeping systems. She feared it would be misread, seen as symbolic of instability, or worse, prophecy. Instead of confronting the truth behind it, she buried it. Some things, she reportedly told her closest aide, should never be spoken of again. But that silence, well-intentioned or not, had consequences. The resurfacing of the image decades later proved the past was not buried, it was merely waiting. The archivist who revealed the sketch did so after comparing Louis's leaked drawing with restricted files. What stunned him wasn't just the similar imagery, but a small symbol in the bottom right corner. A triangular insignia with an eye at its center, almost invisible unless you knew to look. Identical in both William and Louis's drawings. When he ran it through royal symbology references, only one match appeared: an obscure Masonic emblem tied to a long-defunct royal order, believed to have been dissolved before William was even born. This discovery opened a dark door. It suggested that whatever haunted Louis had not appeared out of nowhere. It had form. History. A cycle. Whispers among royal watchers began to shift from psychological speculation to something darker, generational trauma, or perhaps something more ominous. A curse. One linked not to the royal bloodline directly, but to a secret binding oath from centuries past, tied to symbols and secrets passed down through the halls of power. More chilling still was the revelation that William's sketch was not the only one. The archivist discovered several other files marked with heavy redactions, all from royal children across generations. Each sketch, stored quietly, followed a similar pattern. Towers, shadows, broken crowns. And in nearly all of them, a lone child, standing or falling, surrounded by silence. It was no longer possible to call these coincidences. When William was shown his own childhood drawing, he reportedly sat in silence for over 10 minutes. Then, without looking up, he whispered, "I knew it wasn't over." And with that, the palace understood this wasn't just Louis's story. It was a pattern. A warning passed through blood and time, ignored for too long. And as theories swirled, a sudden disappearance inside the palace threw everything into chaos. The royal aide who handled Louis's drawing vanished without explanation. No resignation. No statement. No trace. His departure was so abrupt, security footage of him leaving the palace has reportedly been sealed. What happened to him? And what did he learn? James Whitmore had always been a fixture within the palace, a quiet, trusted aide, who dealt with sensitive files and delicate transitions between royals and advisors. For over a decade, his loyalty was unquestioned. But that loyalty, it seems, may have come at a cost. The moment Louis's drawing began causing unrest behind closed doors, Whitmore was the one assigned to retrieve and secure it. He was seen holding the original sketch after it had been confiscated from the art teacher, instructed to deliver it to the private royal archive under full confidentiality. No one knew what happened in those moments between delivery and disappearance. But what followed was a silence too heavy to ignore. When Whitmore failed to report for duty the next morning, there was initial confusion, not panic. But by midday, a quiet search was initiated. His flat in central London was unlocked. Nothing appeared stolen. His mobile phone was on the kitchen counter, still charged. His wallet, untouched, sat beside it. All signs of a man who left in a hurry or under duress. But what chilled investigators most was what he left behind on his desk. A half-burned piece of paper with faint red markings that closely resembled Louis's drawing. Someone had tried to destroy it, but not completely. The palace remained tight-lipped. Internally, whispers escalated. Some believed Whitmore had fled, fearing what he'd discovered. Others thought he'd been silenced, a scapegoat to contain growing paranoia. But a former colleague who requested anonymity revealed that, in the days leading up to his disappearance, Whitmore had been visibly shaken. He kept glancing over his shoulder, she said, like he thought someone was watching. He told me he saw something in the corner of the drawing, something no one else mentioned. Then he stopped talking about it entirely. CCTV footage reportedly shows Whitmore exiting the palace around 2:13 a.m. On the night he vanished, wearing a suit but no overcoat, unusual for the biting cold. His face appeared pale, and he walked with urgency, avoiding the main entrance. That footage has since been sealed under palace order. Official statements refer to his departure as a private matter, fueling rumors that the truth of his fate is being deliberately buried. No body was found. No farewell note surfaced. But what did surface was a wave of speculation. Had he been warned off? Had he uncovered something embedded within the drawing? Something not meant to be deciphered? Or had the weight of secrets cracked his sanity? Whatever the truth, his disappearance cast a long, cold shadow across an already fractured institution. The drawing, the silence, the sealed footage, it all pointed to a deeper rot within the walls of royalty. The kind of rot that couldn't be scrubbed clean with tradition or denial. James Whitmore was no longer just a missing aide. He had become a symbol of fear, of truth, of something the palace would rather erase than explain. The palace tightened its grip, but behind closed doors, one monarch was reaching their breaking point. King Charles was overheard in a state of distress during a late-night walk through the royal gardens. "I should have burned it," he muttered, not knowing his words would be leaked. What secret had he been hiding? And how long had he known this darkness haunted his bloodline? Those words, spoken in the quiet of night, sent shockwaves through the palace once they surfaced. A senior gardener, tending to the grounds after midnight, later claimed he heard the king pacing slowly, speaking not to a phone or an aide, but to the darkness itself. His voice was low, fractured, as if wrestling with a memory he could no longer suppress. The gardener recalled Charles stopping abruptly, staring into the shadows, and whispering, "It always comes back." The implication was terrifying. This was not confusion. This was recognition. Inside the palace, Camilla moved swiftly. Staff were reportedly instructed not to discuss the incident under any circumstances. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when supervisors entered rooms. Doors were quietly closed. The palace atmosphere shifted from concern to containment. Meanwhile, Charles began making remarks that unsettled even his closest advisors. During a private briefing, he spoke cryptically about protecting the children at all costs, stressing those words with unusual intensity. Not protecting the crown. Not protecting tradition. The children. As if he knew something was coming for them. In the days that followed, Charles was seen returning repeatedly to the Queen's old writing desk, a place long rumored to house correspondence never meant for public eyes. Letters sealed, documents hidden, truths postponed. Staff noticed him sitting there for long stretches, reading, rereading, sometimes closing his eyes as if bracing himself. Whatever he found there did not bring relief. It brought regret. Soon after, 2 scheduled public appearances were canceled without explanation, officially attributed to family needs. But those inside the palace knew better. This was a man confronting the consequences of silence. Then came the meeting. A family gathering called with unusual urgency. No phones allowed. No aides present. No notes taken. Just the core members of the royal family seated together, facing a reality they could no longer deny. Voices were raised, accusations whispered, and at one point, according to an insider, Charles reportedly said, "We should have stopped this when it first appeared." That single sentence confirmed what many had feared. This wasn't new. It had been managed, suppressed, passed down. When the meeting ended, no statements were released. No reassurances offered. The palace gates remained closed, and the silence that followed felt heavier than ever. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the storm might finally subside, buried once again beneath protocol and power. But the past had learned how to wait. And it wasn't finished. But just when it seemed the storm had settled, a final twist would ignite a whole new panic: the second drawing. Weeks after the original drawing shook the palace, a second image surfaced, delivered anonymously. It bore the same symbols, the same haunting imagery, but was not drawn by Louis. Experts confirmed the style matched an adult hand. The note attached simply read, "He's awake again." The envelope arrived without warning. Slipped silently under Catherine's door during the early hours of the morning, it was discovered not by palace security, but by Catherine herself. She reportedly froze upon opening it, her breath caught as her eyes locked on the drawing. This time the figures were more detailed. The shadows that loomed in Louis' original had grown teeth, elongated limbs, and now wore torn royal robes. The blood-stained crown was still there, only now it sat cracked atop a child's head. And in the corner, barely visible, was the same strange triangular symbol that had appeared in Louis and William's sketches before. It wasn't a replica. It was an escalation. What made the image truly terrifying was not just its content, but what it revealed. The drawing depicted a hidden corridor, one that had never been made public. A secret passage tucked behind the East Wing's library fireplace, known only to a handful of living royals and high-clearance aides. Whoever created this image wasn't speculating. They had been there, and they were sending a message. Palace panic reignited. This wasn't a random act. It was deliberate, strategic, intimate. The implications were chilling. Someone within the palace, or with unrestricted access to its most guarded architecture, had produced this drawing and chose Catherine, not the king, as its recipient. A full sweep of the East Wing was immediately ordered. Protection officers combed every crevice, every tunnel, every locked chamber. No intruder was found. No cameras showed any breach. But that only deepened the fear. If no one had been seen, how had the drawing gotten there? How had it moved through the palace unnoticed? Catherine, visibly shaken, demanded a list of every staff member on duty that night. Forensics began analyzing the handwriting of the attached note, only to confirm what the palace feared most: none of the staff matched. Not a single fingerprint. No DNA trace. The drawing was clean. Too clean. The image was sent for deeper analysis, scheduled to be secured at a remote facility in Scotland. But somewhere between dispatch and delivery, the file disappeared. The transport van, registered with the Crown, had no GPS failures. The officers responsible had spotless records. Yet the sketch along with the envelope was never seen again. The royal press office remained silent. But behind palace walls, chaos simmered. As whispers spread, so did darker questions. Was this really the work of a rogue insider? Or was it something older, something tied to the very foundations of the monarchy? There were those now who openly suggested that the figure Louis described, the man in the walls, was not merely a child's fantasy but a spectral echo, one that attached itself to bloodlines, not buildings. The same figure William dreamed of. The same presence Harry remembered in the mirrors. And now, one that had returned with purpose. Fear tightened its grip. Doors were double-locked. Children moved only under supervision. And yet, the sense of control was gone. What once hid beneath the surface had risen again, more emboldened than ever. The silence inside the palace had become unbearable. Not because of what was being said, but because of what no one dared to say aloud. And so, the question remains, who is the man in the walls? And why is he watching the royal children? Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.